Thrive Guys, Episode 5, File Management. How are we today, sir?
No, how are you?
Oh, well, I'm good. Thank you for insisting that I answer first. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. Has it been a productive week for you so far?
I would say yes. It has been a productive week. Looking at my time tracking, I've had a week balanced in the right favour. In the right favour? In the right area. So, as you know, I track my time and I broadly split it down between sales effort and non-sales effort, and the sales effort was higher than the non-sales effort, and that's always a good thing. So, yeah, that's a successful week. What about yourself?
Yep, it's been very, very productive. I've spent a lot of my week automating a lot of the tasks that I do, the mundane tasks, so I can focus on doing the more interesting and more technical things. And I've achieved more than I anticipated, if I'm honest. So it's been very good.
So one thing we do every week is we talk about how we've won this week. So automation, is that your win of the week, or is there something else that you've done where you've said, yeah, that's my win?
This is an automated response. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Very
Automation
nice.
has made my life so much easier in terms of creating documents, sending emails. Like I think we discussed this earlier in the week in terms of just having a button that you can press that will insert text that you need for sort of generic blanket emails that you send between either your colleagues or to the clients. Even if it's just the last two lines that says, what's a good example? Like, thanks for your time, kind regards, Dan. It saves a small amount of time and then it just all builds up over the week. So the thing with automation is I try and do the quick wins as opposed to the longer term goals, and then I'll focus on those a bit later.
Great. My win of the week is I finished my third book of 2021. So I think I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, where I have a yearly theme. It's the year of prestige.
Correct.
See episode, I think it was episode 2, we talked about this. Essentially, I am trying to do certain things in my life to level up. And I kind of use the idea of prestige when, you're in Call of Duty and you basically start at the beginning after you've leveled up completely. I feel like that's where I'm at right now in my life. So my first sort of side of the prestige, I call it a season, is the season of reading. And so I'm not really a big reader. I find it difficult to concentrate on books, but audiobooks have been, really good. And they've been actually a way that I've been able to digest information on my morning walk. So it's been amazing. So the 3 books I've read so far this year are The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I don't know if that's said right. Atomic Habits by James Clear, which was an amazing book. And I've just finished Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, one thing I have noticed is if you were to ask me, give me a summary on those 3 books, I'd probably struggle quite a bit to just rattle it off, because I've just been listening to them and enjoying them. I've not necessarily been kind of taking notes or anything like that. So I've decided that I'm going to start writing summaries about the books I'm reading, and I'm going to hold myself accountable by sharing them with the world somehow. Now, I don't know whether that's going to be...
You could also account for that in your journal. If you're doing your daily journal, you could just put a passage from the book that kind of particularly resonated with you, as opposed to doing like an essay at the end of the day or a report that you want to hand in. It'd be nice to just have like a journal that says, I listened to this today and the part that resonated with me was, especially if you're talking about Atomic Habits, you can, note down things that you would maybe take from the book and put into your daily life.
Yeah, I do that already. So I'm glad you said that, because we're on the same page. So that's good. Kind of what I want to do over and above that is have because that's just holding myself accountable. That's not necessarily having it where I'm sharing it, So there's no, if I don't write a journal entry, then it's like, oh, no one's going to know. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to share it with the world somehow.
Blog.
Well, that's my idea. Right. No, so one of the things I'm thinking about, and this is, I guess, a bit of a meta part of the conversation, right, is obviously Thrive Guys is a podcast, but actually it could be something that we do outside of the podcast. where we have written content that people can consume about things that we do to try and better our lives and to be more productive and all of that good stuff. So
it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I was legitimately thinking about this last night on the topic of automation. This is why I kind of wanted to skim over it lightly, because there's a lot of guides and articles I wanted to write regarding my thought process behind that, because I don't know necessarily whether it's unique, but it's not automation in the standard sense of it. And a lot of it could benefit, I guess, businesses and people as a whole. Like, yeah, I'll save it, because I think it'd be really interesting to write an article and put it in the same repository that you're talking about.
Brilliant. Sounds good. And that wasn't planned. This is a natural, organic conversation. I have not spoken to Dan about doing this whatsoever. So I've kind of just been ruminating on it in a positive way over the last kind of day or so. So the next book I'm reading, because I want to share it now so that later on, when I actually have to write something, I have an accountability partner, which is anybody who listens to this podcast. So it's called Make Time, and it's by Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky. It originally caught my attention as maybe something to learn about focusing and setting intentions, which is something that I'm already sort of trying to instill. But now I've read a couple of hours, it may actually deliver more value to me than that. So yeah, I'll give you kind of a brief synopsis. So these two guys used to work in senior positions at Google. I think they worked at Gmail and who? What do you mean?
Is that a startup?
Oh dear. I'm going to gloss over that because
Go on.
that was a bad joke. Dan, have another sip of that coffee. Like, get it
very
in
early
you.
for me.
So yeah, they I think one of them worked at Gmail, one of them worked at YouTube, and they've come up with this really simple framework to help people get more meaningful work done rather than just reacting. Now, this really played into what we were talking about last week about email, and it's something that I've been trying to instill in myself, you know, getting out of the being productive, just feeling like you're answering emails all the time, and actually getting meaningful work done. So, you know, I'll update you as the weeks go on in terms of what I'm thinking about that. And I think, you know, doing the book summary and, you know, just distilling my thoughts and sharing them will really help me understand the book better and actually kind of understand what my thoughts about the book are in a bit more detail. So, yeah, that's the idea anyway. So yeah.
No, I'm on board with that. I think that sounds awesome. I think I'd be interested in sort of using that framework, and that was kind of the point of the automation as well. So it very nicely links in, because the whole point of the automation is to do all the stuff that doesn't really add any value. So, for example, with an email, typing up your first name and saying, "Hi, it's me. How are you doing? You know, I hope all is well." That's going to be the same across the board. You know, you want to automate that. You don't want to have to sit there and go, "Oh, what am I going to say to this? How are they going to interpret what I say?" So I was using the Stream Deck that we'll probably come on to in another episode. But I'd use the Stream Deck and just press a shortcut, and it just puts all the text in for me. Even just to finish, like signing off my email. I know you have signatures within Outlook, but this can be in any platform and any medium. It's just done. And I use it specifically when I use templates for like technical issues. As I explained last week, you know, we normally have like an issue, troubleshooting, and what's next. It just pastes those 3 sections in, and I don't have to think about it. I go, what am I doing? You know, what's the issue? And I don't, you know, it's a simple couple of sentences, but it really has added value to my day.
If you do that 300 times a day, that adds up.
Exactly. That's what I think about automation is if you focus on the smaller wins, they all total up. And that's what, I'll definitely share an article with you. It'd be really good to get your thoughts on it as well.
Awesome. No, definitely. So today, file management is on the is on the cards. So we're going to talk about file management today. So I suppose files, like email that we talked about last week, are something that everyone has to deal with, and often how people deal with them is a spectrum, right? So from the militantly organized nested folder structure that is all really neat and tidy and stuff like that, to the unbelievable dumpster fire desktop. And I think everybody's on that spectrum from one to the other.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So I mean, where do you place? Well, let's just tell the people that are listening to this, we did share a picture of each other's desktop with each other before this to
Yeah.
kind of give you an idea of, what we were working with, because Joe had militantly said, no, my desktop's got nothing on it. It's empty. And I thought, yeah, okay, cool. Mine also has nothing on it, which largely it doesn't. All of the stuff I have on my desktop has value. But yeah, the comparison, when he said his desktop's empty, there's nothing on it.
No, it's empty. Your point of view of the word empty is very different to the point of view of the word empty for me. Because if you're saying that your desktop is empty, well, anybody who's looking at the show notes now will see your desktop is not empty. My desktop, on the other hand, is incredibly empty. All it has is the screenshots of the desktop that I had to take in order to send you the picture. So
if we're looking at the spectrum, you're on one end, completely empty.
I'm completely empty.
I'm actually quite near you, if I'm honest, if I can explain my process. My girlfriend is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, but she was until yesterday, because I'd mentioned to her that we were going to be talking about desktops and, how we improve our desktops and the podcast. And I just kind of hinted that maybe she needs to listen to it or maybe take some advice, because her desktop is painful. And she sits behind me, so whenever I turn around to say anything, I see it. Not just out the corner of my eye, it's staring back at me, and
that actually makes my hair stand on end on my my arm, like not in a good way.
Nearly passed out last time I turned around. But she tapped me on the shoulder yesterday morning and said, "Look," and I looked, and impeccable. She just deleted most of the crap that was on there, because it is crap, and she then filed it in. She then added a folder called like email downloads, because the way their email server works is any attachment they get sent just goes onto the desktop, which I don't know if it's the way it was set up before. I didn't really question it, and I just went through and said, look, you need to change that to go into a location so you know where it is and what it is, so at least you're giving yourself a fighting chance to delete those files. If somebody sends you an email that's just got like a text file, you don't want to keep that on your desktop for the next 6 months. Just get rid of it. So yeah, let's go through your desktop, your extremely empty desktop.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking that we do today, because there's a couple of different topics that we want to cover in terms of files and desktops and how we manage everything. So let's start with how we manage files. So I'm quite happy to kind of talk you through my process. One thing that you wrote in the notes actually that I really liked in terms of, that's a brilliant sort of thought process in terms of what we should talk about, is when you receive a document, how do you deal with that? What's your thought process? I'd love to dig into that with you. And I think to finish, I'd love to talk about some of the automation, because I know that we've had conversations offline about it before, but I think you're a little bit further along than me. So really keen to talk about that too. So as you've alluded to, and as anybody who's looking at the show notes will attest to, I am on the militant end of the spectrum. So I have nothing on my desktop at all. The desktop is useless to me. I don't see value in putting anything there. So when I either create a file or when I receive a file, it usually has a place. It usually has somewhere that I can put it that makes sense, right?
That isn't your desktop.
That isn't my desktop. And I don't... I work with quite a lot of files all the time. They're mainly Word documents, they're mainly Excel spreadsheets, they're mainly PowerPoint presentations, right? And so I have a nested folder system. Everything has its place, and that sits on my work OneDrive. So when it comes to my professional files, they're impeccably organized. So I'll give you some examples, right? So all of my client-based documents, so contracts, proposals, pricing, spreadsheets, etc., they're all in the nested files structure. That structure is sorted alphabetically, and then by client, and then by project. So, for example, if I was looking for ABC Limited, ABC Limited would be in A, and then ABC Limited, and then all of the projects that I was working with ABC Limited, both past and present, will all be there. And so if I just pick the project and then all the documents, and even kind of saved emails that I save to PDF because they're important, and they're, if something happened in the future that we needed to draw back on, some of the communication between the two parties, they're there. That's all in that folder.
I like that, and I work very similarly. But the stuff you're talking about, like extra notes and extra documents that don't necessarily relate to a project but may be valuable in the future, I just have in an archive folder. So for all of my client folders, I'll have an archive, and it's like, there's no point in having a junk folder for your client. It's not professional. But having an archive where it's like that might be valuable, you can then apply your own file structure into that. So it's like archive, and it's sort of related to the project, but it's not ongoing, and it's not actually relevant to what I'm doing now. So I like that, and the reason the automation would work really good for you and really well is because you have already got the files in place. You've got the folders in place, so you're not having to create anything new. So the way mine works at the moment is I use like a prefix. So if we're using Google as the example, anything that came from Google, I'd take from wherever it is. If it was an email from Google, I would put it on my desktop, and then I'd put the prefix on that file for GGL, and the automation will look for those files and for those prefixes and move it onto my OneDrive.
Nice. So what tool do you use to do that?
It's something called Automation Workshop. One of those. I'm pretty new to it. I needed something that was quick and easy, and it seems to do the job, and it does it really well. It works on like task schedulers inbuilt to Windows. Because a lot of our clients use Windows, and I was like, well, if we build something custom, we have to install all the custom plugins, especially if you're using something like Python, you have to install all the libraries, etc. It just made no sense to be going down the route of trying to build something that's completely custom. Find something that works, and then work out how you're going to scale it. So yeah, it started off working for all of my files, and then I guess we'll try and migrate it to a bigger part of the business at some point. But
nice. That sounds great. I mean, obviously, I'm a Mac user, so I did try in the past to use something called Hazel to auto-file documents associated to a particular project. I couldn't quite get it to work, and I just kind of abandoned it after a while. And it required me to kind of change a lot about how I do my naming conventions and things like that. So
that was the biggest part for me. So I do it when it categorizes based on technology as well, because sometimes someone will send an email and just say, here's an upgrade document based on this technology. And it's like, if we're doing Cisco Call Manager, the acronym is CUCM. So I use that prefix and just file it into a CUCM folder. And then I can work out what to do with it.
Cool. Okay. So what sort of files do you typically get then? So, because yours and my roles are pretty different. So I imagine that you get loads of different weird files. And what do you have to keep? What do you how does that all work in your role?
From an email perspective, I very rarely get documents that aren't just sort of guides or tech documents, because as I alluded to last week, we work from like a service desk system, so all of the attachments will stay in there, and I very rarely download and do anything with them. But it's the same as you: Word documents, PowerPoint documents, log files will normally be uploaded to like an FTP or something like that, so we don't really do much with it.
So your files can be quite transient then, I guess, because you would upload it to an FTP, and I guess that's not something that's permanent. It's something that just well, in our business, when we use SFTP, it's live for a period of time, but then because of all of our ISO accreditations, it gets booped.
Exactly,
which is the technical term for deleted. So one thing I'm quite keen to understand, because this is a bit taking a step out of the process, right? And it's a bit more about how your brain works, in my view anyway. When you receive a new document, because this is the paradigm difference between, I think, someone who just chucks it on a desktop and then goes, what do I do with this? Where does it need to go? Like when you receive a document, so when you get sent it, or when you create it, or when you download something off the internet, like, what's your first thought process? Talk me through that sort of, that end-to-end piece that ends with that document being where it needs to be.
So this is where my desktop actually becomes important, because I always download stuff to my desktop before it's filed away. But at the end of my day, that file has to be somewhere. I don't leave it on my desktop. Like you've seen my screenshot, I've got all of my programs there, and I just don't like it. I don't like having a file that's doing nothing. So normally at the end of the day, when I'm doing my shutdown process, I tend to look and go, right, there's that document. What is it? Is it important to me? If it's important to me, then I normally put like a note into Todoist to say, review that tomorrow and attach it to there, or put a link to it wherever it is on the shared drive and be like, you have to look at this tomorrow. This is where it is now. But yeah, if it's something completely new, I'll create a new folder for it, and I'll categorize based on either technology, which I have folders for, or per client. That's it. They're my two categories. I think we have like some third-party stuff, but that'll just go in my third-party folder. But that's how I deal with anything. I get an email and I look at it and I go, who is this related to? how am I going to find this in the future? But if it's that important to me, I'll take out the detail from it and I'll put it in my Notion database because it's easier to read and easier to find for me. So yeah, I don't really embed my documents in Notion. I take out the important bits. So for me, if it's a tech process and somebody says this is important, this is going to impact us in the future, when we do an upgrade, it's like, cool, upgrade issue, straight into Notion. That document can probably go in the bin, but I'll then archive it and say, this is that issue. I tend to find, like, working in a tech-based role, you come across a lot of the same issues. So it's nice to just be able to go back and find a similar issue that you had before and send that out to someone without having to scour the internet or scour through old ticket information. You just go, oh yeah, I remember that. Here's a document on what I've done to fix it, or, you know, how we implemented that before. What about yourself?
What I used to do, but I don't do now, is I used to use OneNote quite a lot for saving emails. But the problem with doing that is when you push something using the sort of the native integration between OneNote and Outlook, it doesn't save the file. It like copies it and pushes it in. And the problem with that is if you're saving it for kind of reference purposes, okay, that's fine. You know, the details there and that's fine. When I'm saving an email, it's often because I might need to use it later and say, you sent me this email and this is what the email says. I need that in an encapsulated file, which is then something I can go, you know, it's like, I need it in like a PDF.
You don't want to have to get a screenshot of their email and be like, in 2005, you said this. I also feel like it comes across a bit unprofessional if you're sending a screenshot like, this is what you said. Whereas if you're just forwarding an email, for example, or taking your old email from them and just say, oh, actually, I think you said this, at that point, it kind of...
Exactly. And it's all encapsulated. It's in the same program. It's like I think it's just generally accepted that a PDF of anything is pretty official. So if it's an email that I need to save, I print it to PDF. And so I've set up a keyboard shortcut on my Mac where I hit Command P and then P again. So it's literally just Command PP. So it's just a really quick,
PP. Easily.
Right? Command PP.
Yeah.
It's easily rememberable, right? And I'm already doing it. So it's like Command PP. The Mac has got a really cool thing where when it goes into a screen, you can then assign a shortcut to anything that's kind of on that screen. So I can't remember exactly where it is, but I think it's in like system preferences and keyboard. Basically, you can tie a keyboard shortcut which basically selects something from a drop down or something like that. So if I hit Command P, it brings up the print dialog, and then I hit P again, and then it selects save as PDF, which is where it is on a Mac, and then it just opens up the file structure. So it opens up, where I last saved a PDF, and then I navigate to where I want to save it, and then save it. So if there's any documents, then I do the exact same thing. Obviously don't print them, but I will, save them to the relevant client folder. But I'm always doing that. I'm not chucking anything on the desktop or anything like that. And I have to have everything organized, because one of the things that I do quite a lot is if a colleague asks me for a document, I go, tell you what, I'll just share this folder with you and you can get whatever document you like.
The full client folder, like the top folder or like project folder, how do you share that? Because I suppose that's the benefit of OneDrive as well, is just sharing files across. I love OneDrive.
Yeah.
And I only actually started using it last year. I was an avid user of Dropbox, and I still use Dropbox, but now I use that for more production stuff. And for, like, our work has OneDrive, so I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to use that, because my work stuff stays on my work OneDrive. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to sync that to my devices at home. It's just keep everything in one place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to answer your question, I don't really share client documents, because none of my colleagues need to have a specific client folder, client document. But I'll give you an example. I save every little piece of collateral that my company make, and I just save it on my system rather than having to go and navigate into whatever website that it's on, where I've had to fake being a customer in order to get it, or whatever it might be. And so there's lots of documentation that I've created as well, like standard proposal templates and things like that, for some of the projects and side projects that I've spearheaded at the company I work at. And so rather than having 15 people go, oh, have you got that document? Have you got that proposal? Or have you got anything on hosting, for example? So, part of our business is infrastructure as a service. So I've got a collateral folder, which is sorted by sales or technical. So if it's sales stuff, it goes in the sales. If it's tech collateral, it goes in the tech stuff. and then by product division that it sits within. So if I wanted to share technical info on our infrastructure as a service business, I can go to collateral tech hosting and it's there. And then I can share that collateral folder with any of my colleagues and go, right, if you want something, it's there. If I add anything to it, you can access it. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is stop people asking me questions. Not that I don't like people asking me questions, but I don't like people asking me the same question over and over again.
Yeah, I feel like we're at the exact same impasse in our careers in terms of that's how I operate as well. Because I do get people saying, oh, do you remember this? Have you got a document for it? And it's like, I don't just have a document for that. I have a template for that. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do with all of my individual documents is standardize everything. And that's part of the bigger piece around automation is standardizing everything. So the way that my program works at the moment is that if somebody says, oh, look, we've got a new client on board, you'll say, who's the client? It's ABC. So it'll open up a pop-up window and say, enter the client details. I'll type in ABC. And what it will do is it will then take all of the templates, apply ABC to the file name and the month that they've come on board or the month. Yeah, and then it will spit that document out into the relevant. It also creates the folder and creates the relevant locations for each of those file. So if, for example, like we do a patch analysis for some of our clients, which can be, quarterly, yearly, biannually. So if somebody says to me, look, we need to do a patch analysis for a new client and we need it done urgently, I'll just run my app and say, what's the client name? And they go, yep, it's ABC. I hit it, done, ABC. It puts it in all of the relevant files on my OneDrive and I can share that link with someone. They can put it where they want because I love companies having standardized formats and I love it all being in one location, but I don't want to have to deal with that. So all of my templates are on my OneDrive and all of the places I upload are on my OneDrive and I'll share the link with whoever's asked for it and say, look, there it is. Put it in the relevant location that you feel is necessary. If you need another one, let me know. And that's been the huge issue and the huge kind of piece of work that I've been working on over the last few months is trying to standardize all sorts of processes. This is for anything. Like automation for me has been a purely selfish act. I'm not shying away from that. Anything that I can do to improve my own well-being and my own processes first can always be scaled out to someone else.
Brilliant. That's awesome. That's really, really good. It feels like you are much further along than I am, to be honest with you. As I talked about earlier, I did try using Hazel to auto-file documents associated to a particular project, but I couldn't quite get it to work and kind of abandoned it because it required me to change too much about my naming conventions and the like. And I know that's something that you've had to do, but yeah, I need to circle back round on it, to be honest with you, because I want to do that, but I don't quite know how to do it yet in terms of what's going to work well for me. But one thing that I am testing at the moment is an app called Keyboard Maestro, which I've just started using.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah. One of the things I've just used over the last 2 days. So I've started setting up certain keyboard shortcuts that allow me to get to certain folders in the file structure. So from a information retrieval point of view, it kind of solves 85% of the problem I was trying to solve with Hazel. It doesn't give me everything I want, but it's kind of close enough for rock and roll. So I don't know whether I'll actually bother doing the full automation piece because I like part of the beauty of my system is the intentionality of it.
And the control you have over it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Intentionality and control completely. And I think that
there's something a bit daunting as well about like putting stuff on your desktop and just watching it disappear. When it first happened, you're a bit like, hang on a minute. Yeah, so I've got an error log that writes to Windows. So if I'm really not sure where it's gone, I'll check. But what you're talking about there in terms of the keyboard shortcuts, I don't want to bang on about it, but the Stream Deck is incredible for that. Like even if you're not a streamer or whatever, I'm clearly not, but I use it for like just putting a shortcut into OneDrive. So if you've got multiple projects and you're working on them simultaneously, you could have a button that will just open up that folder. So if you're working on, like I've set it with a client logo, so I can click on the client logo on the Stream Deck and it will take me to their folder. Likewise, you could have literally a whole Stream Deck of 15 different clients and just click it when you wanted it and minimize if you do like a multi-action, you could minimize everything else and just open that folder. So you're like, I'm ready to go.
That's good.
I was talking to Kerry about this yesterday. Like it'd be amazing to just sort of, if you're working on 15 different projects, you could just be like, I don't want to work on that one at the moment. I'm going to go on to the next. Hit the button. It minimizes everything. You're ready to go. It's almost like having multiple desktops specific to that client, for example.
Contextual computing, I think, is there's another podcast that talks about this quite a lot, and it's being able to switch contexts, so go from one project to another or one type of work to another with a click of a button, and automating your, almost like being the conductor of an orchestra, where you're changing the way that your computer is looking and feeling and all of that, just with a a keyboard shortcut, or or a press of a button on a Stream Deck. It's just like, it's buttery deliciousness, and that I can't wait to really get my teeth into. Yeah, I think that's something that we should have as a separate full kind of episode, in terms of, right, this is what we've been able to do with our respective tools. And I think that's because I think the reason why I want to be productive is so that I can get the most out of every day, but then importantly, do it in a way that is efficient and that gives me time back to do the things that, are meaningful to me, like spending time with my family and the things that work will take you away from, And I think we talked about this in episode 2 about disconnecting. I think automation is the way that is the catalyst to better disconnection, if that makes sense.
I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more. And that's the point. Like, I tend to find that having all of these tasks automated just kind of saves me, even if it's 15 minutes here and there. If somebody asks me for a document, I just go, yep. I right click the app, enter the client name, or even just, create a new template and just bish, bash, bosh, I'm ready to go. I don't have to do any of the legwork. And that's what I was trying to say to some of my colleagues is, like, people that do the biannual patching, even if they have to they get something assigned to them and say, oh, by the way, you've got to do the patching. Your job should be to do the patching. Your job shouldn't be to go into the relevant location, download that file, rename it, start your work, and then re-upload it to that location. Let someone do it for you. So the way I automated that is every 6 months, it's the first Monday of, I think, January and July, it will send an email to our ticketing system with a link to the location as a hyperlink. So literally, if you imagine you got assigned that task, so somebody says, Joe, can you do this? In that email would just have the task, and you click on it and you've got the document ready in front of you. It's like, so you can focus on actually putting the content in it and, doing your job, really. I'm not an administrator. I'm not a document writer. I'm not an underwriter. So I'm an engineer. So I want to do engineering. And that's the point, is the whole reason around automating for me was so I can focus on being an engineer and start, learning more about the tools of the trade, because in recent years, I haven't really been doing much of that. Haven't been studying for exams, not out of laziness. Like, I've arguably been the most productive I've been in years. But once that stuff's out the way, I can focus on what my real work goals are and, maybe learn a different skill. I've been talking about like moving into the security space for a while, but I've just put no effort into it because I've been so focused on doing everything else. And if that's automated and it's all just like an email that goes out to someone on behalf of me, great, because then I don't have to think about that. I don't have to think every 6 months, maybe have we done that patch, or, have we done release management for this client? It's like, I don't have to think about it. It's just done. So I'm quite excited to see where it goes. And, I wasn't even a big advocate of the Stream Deck. I'd heard about it months and months ago. And I just put in an order for one. I just thought, I'm just going to give it a go and see how I get on. And even those little shortcut buttons just take so much effort away from me having to click around and find things. I've got it for all of the programs I use. I just click it and go, yep, I'm ready to go. So that's kind of going back to the desktop side, is after seeing your desktop, I truly am inspired to just blat my desktop, get everything off it, and have everything on the Stream Deck.
Bin it all off, mate. You don't need it.
No, I completely agree, and that's the benefit of this conversation, is I've seen the light, and I want my desktop to be plain. I want to have nothing on there, so I can just focus on the tasks that are important to me. So what I'm going to try and do, and I'm saying this so I can be accountable for it, is what I'm trying to do is migrate all of my programs and shortcuts onto the Stream Deck, because it's something I'm looking to use permanently.
Nice.
And just get all of my programs off my desktop, so I can just go, right, what am I working on today? Look at Stream Deck. It's this. That's the app I need, instead of having to click around. So first thing in the morning, I could maybe run an automated task that loads up all of the stuff I need, and I'm ready to go.
Yep.
I'm really excited about that, actually.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear about how you get on with it, because that is something. I'm doing the same thing with Keyboard Maestro. I've got a a boot up task that basically opens Notion and opens a Google Chrome tab and opens Toggle on my Mac, and that's what I need to do my daily boot up process. And then I've got an evening one at 5:45, I think, where it blows away all of the other apps that I might be working on and just puts Notion at the front. So it's like, right, Joe, it's time to shut down. You need to go through your daily shutdown process so that I'm not working late into the evening, losing time with my other half and stuff. That's
what it's all about.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And I think that, I'm going to watch how you get on with the Stream Deck with eagerness, and maybe I'll put in an order for it myself. So watch this space.
Yeah, it also makes you feel cool as well, right? Let's not ignore that. When you say to, like, especially when my girlfriend sat behind me and I say, "Oh, shutting down for the day," and I press a button and it goes, "Yep, your machine's locked, everything's done." One button, especially when I say I'm going to go work in the studio and I set it to studio mode and I press the button that turns my lights on via the Hue. Yeah. Instead of having to open the app or speak to, the Dave unit, which is Alexa. I don't want to say it too loud because it's right next to me.
It's like sci-fi. It's like being in bloody Star Trek. It's awesome. I love it. I'm fully on board with it, mate.
Yeah, let's not ignore the nerdy fact of it. And I lock it and it matches my desktop background as well. So the little stuff like that kind of makes me think it's not just a novelty. Although it's there for productivity, it's also cool as shit as well. So.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. I love that. Look, let's leave that there because we don't want to spend another half an hour talking about it, because we want to do that in a follow-up episode. But I'm really excited to hear about how you get on. And it may even be that we have a conversation about both of our uses of Stream Deck. We shall see. So I wanted to part ways with you today by setting you a challenge, Dan.
Oofed. Yeah. I love a challenge.
Yeah. So I want you...
Sorry, assign it to me in Notion and I'll get back to you within 3 days.
Yeah. I want you to start time tracking. That's my challenge to you over the next 4 weeks. Download Toggle, set up. Yeah, you could probably. I think you even said offline that you could set up starting timers on your Stream Deck. So you're in a position.
I'm trying to sell a Stream Deck to you because brilliant. As I said, the Toggle timer on it is just fantastic. I don't use Toggle yet, but you sync it to your Toggle account, so you have your projects, and basically you just hit the button to say on, and then hit it to say off. Like, I work in a different way, like we discussed previously, using Forest. So I've got a timer that when I press it sets a 25-minute timer, and it just alerts me when it's done. Literally makes a ping noise. So I'm like, cool, I'm taking a 2-minute break and I'll go walk. So I did look into the Toggle aspect of it because it's a conversation I actually had with my boss around trying to track the effort that I put into different tasks and stuff like that. So it kind of has tied in nicely having this conversation with you about how you operate, because I'm going to use some of that methodology in what I do, and I'm quite excited about that.
Brilliant.
I think we probably need to have an offline discussion about how you do it, and maybe I can have a look at what yours is set up as, because your sales versus non-sales effort doesn't align with what I do. But
no,
if I don't want to start fresh, really, I kind of want to adopt your strategy and see how they differ instead of starting fresh and going, this is how I do it. Because over the 4 weeks, I'm definitely going to move into that realm of having my own way of dealing with it. But
for sure,
it'd be cool if we were level-headed when we started off.
So why don't we do this, right? So this is the challenge. It sounds like it's going to be a really easy challenge for you. So maybe it's not so much of a challenge, but that's fine. I will show you how I do time tracking, and perhaps we talk about it next week in a bit of detail before we kind of get into the main topic of the show. And then we review where you are at 4 weeks' time. And then you can kind of share. Maybe we do an episode on time tracking. So we'll deep dive into what we've learned over the last 4 weeks in terms of, okay, we've tracked our time. This is what we've learned. Maybe there's some surprises that we weren't expecting. And yeah, I think that would be a good idea to chat through, to be honest. So why don't we do that?
You don't time track your personal life as well, do you?
No.
Good.
Not yet.
I'm more considering that if I put a timer for when Kerry bothers me at work, I can say, oh, yep, hit the timer and say, yep, say what you need to say. And then when she's finished, I'll time that off and say, look, at the end of the day, I can give her a report and say, out of the 8 hours of my working day, you've spoken to me for an hour and 45 minutes of those. So
I think that is a recipe for an argument. So if I was you, I probably would. Well, I mean, it's your funeral. You do what you like, mate.
Indeed.
Cool. Lovely. Okay, well, look, it's a good chat today. I think that's been really interesting to find out more about how you manage files and what files mean to you, and some of the automation stuff I'm really keen to kind of dig into further. But I think that's it for today. So thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our show. And if you really, really liked it, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out, helps us grow our audience. So, only if you loved it, but if you did, then that'd be really good. If you'd like to hear more from Dan or myself, please follow us on Twitter at ThriveGuysPod. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day.